Hey guys, TechNometry here with the video for you guys. In today's video, we'll be comparing the iPhone 13 Pro that recently came out against the iPhone 12 Pro, which was released last year. And there's been a lot of mixed reviews between the release of iPhone 13 lineup, and it didn't seem like Apple has made a lot of innovation here compared to the 12 Pro. And in this video, I'm going to try to break down, review some of the top differences that you're going to be getting if you're going to be upgrading it, and finally talk about if it's worth upgrading or not. And if you guys are new to our channel, we do a lot of tech news reviews and giveaway, so make sure that like and subscribe button. Also, if you guys are in the market for one of these devices at a discounted price, make sure you guys check out the links in the description section. So as you can see, both of the phones come in pretty much the same sort of boxing. The only thing Apple has changed so far with the 13 from the 12 is the just removing that plastic film that used to be on the box. Really slight film, not a noticeable thing, where they added now these things on top where you just strip it off. So that's going to be the first thing. And besides that, if you open it up between the boxes, you'll notice but both of the box actually are about the same. In a way, you might say that Apple hasn't done anything with the boxing itself. If you're going to be getting that USB-C cable and that instruction pamphlet with the SIM ejector tool, and then the little bit of pamphlet that you get, and then one Apple sticker. Apple really did reduce the size of the boxes after the iPhone 12 lineup, which again, even if you buy any of the newer phones, you'll be able to see that there isn't much going on. The other thing is that the iPhone 12 here is no longer available to purchase on Apple's website. Not sure why the 12 Pro is completely gone from Apple's website. You can still purchase the regular 12 and the 12 mini. So if you're getting the Pro right now, thinking of getting the 12 Pro, you're gonna have to get it from a carrier or a retail store that still has it, but Apple no longer has it on their website. And it could be indication that they're really trying to push you to use the iPhone 13 Pro. So let's talk about these two phones. Of course, if you hold a side by side, both of the phones started with a $1,000 price point at the base, 128 gig, and that's going to be the first thing you'll notice is the storage. So both of the phones come with the base storage of 128 gigs. So if we go into the base storage, you'll see this is the base model, so we get about 128 gigs or so. And the other thing about this 128 gigs is that you can actually get it in 256 gig, 512 gig, and for the very first time on the 13 Pro here, you can actually get it in 1 terabyte, which isn't possible on the iPhone 12 Pro, which only gives at the maximum 512 gigs. So if you're a person that really needs to have a ton of stuff on the device and you need that terabyte, that's where you're looking at the iPhone 13 Pro. So big difference. Of course, each time you do go for a bigger storage, you're going to be paying a lot more than $999 price tag. Currently, if you're looking for a new iPhone 12 Pro, you're probably paying around $900. Not really saving a lot, but you're probably getting that sort of discount. So not too much of a discount, but that's something you need to. So besides holding these two phones, let's talk about some other things. Of course, we know 13 Pro was released this year, and in 2020 the 12 Pro was released. For the phones side by side, you'll notice that again both of the phones are about the same size, and for a regular person you wouldn't care. Now if we flip it on the back side of the phone, you'll notice of course the color difference. That's because these are two different models. Both of the phones come actually in 4 different colors. The Pro model you can get in the base gold, graphite, and silver one, and then the contrasting difference in terms of color choices is now on the 13 Pro is a new color known as Sierra Blue, where on the 12 Pro used to be the other Pacific Blue that was introduced. So each time Apple seems to introduce a new color or shade of blue, that seems to be the trend. But if we look at it, of course, both of the phones side-wise, they look about the same. One thing we notice is the camera size. So if you look at holding a side by side, you notice on the 13 Pro, if you go zoom up closely here, the camera here, if you do a side-by-side comparison, is that the bump on the camera on the 13 Pro is huge compared to the bumps on the camera on the iPhone 12 itself. Those are huge glass back, and there's been slight improvement of the camera as expected with every new iPhone. Apple tends to do that, so that's going to be the big factor. Of course, they didn't add any more camera that they have, so you still have those 3 12 megapixel camera on both of these phones. And talking about that the weight of both of the phones are about the same, although the iPhone 13 Pro is actually a little bit heavier. You're looking at a 7.19 ounce compared to the 6.66 ounce on the 12 Pro, which is 204 grams for the iPhone 13 Pro here. It's a little bit heavier, not too much. You can't really feel it in terms if you really don't have both of the phones. You may think they weigh about the same, but if you were to weigh it, it definitely is bigger, possibly because of those bigger lens that we are seeing. Now let's talk about the display itself. Of course, both of the phones have really nice display. You have a 6.1 Super Retina XDR OLED display, but the one big thing with the display itself is, if you notice here on the 13 Pro, is that 120 hertz Pro motion, which on the iPhone 12 Pro it's just a 60 hertz. So when we do slide it over, you see sort of that cleaner look. So if we open up settings here, you notice that resolution that is more fluid, if you will. If you also notice here, we have the brightness setting different. So both of the phones do have another big distinction factor is the max brightness nit. So on the iPhone 13 Pro, you get 1000 nits of max brightness versus 800 on the iPhone 12 Pro. So 200 bright max nit, but that 128 hertz is probably the biggest thing to mention between these two phones at display. Of course, the other thing when we talk about display is you got to talk about the camera. Again, we talked about the camera being huge on the 13 Pro, and if you're comparing it against, both of the phones have about the same set of cameras. The one thing we will mention is that now on the 13 Pro is this new photo mode known as what's known as photographic style. Now, photographic style might not appear for you right away up here. You have to go into settings and then go into camera here. Initially, when it does show up, when you set it up, you'll notice that. But if you don't show it up, you're going to have to come here and then you'll notice that photographic style, which allows you to personalize the look of photos by bringing your preference of how you want to capture it. So basically, Apple's telling you these are the styles that you can choose from. Which one do you want for your photographic style? So that's kind of trying to really tune the settings of the camera. And of course, along with that comes, for the very first time, is the introduction of cinematic mode, which you can record in 1080p at 30 frames per second. Again, cinematic mode really allows you to zoom in and out and give you that sort of almost crystal quality of video recording, almost a movie grade, if you will, as we've seen in the commercial from the Apple site itself. And of course, along with that comes this minor differences that the zoom on the iPhone 13 Pro is 6 times more for the optical versus 4 times on the iPhone 12 Pro. So that's going to be the big thing. Probably you notice, of course, there are some minor details there, but again, to a regular user, you're probably not going to be concerned with those minor details besides the cinematic and the photographic styles and the zoom level of it. And now let's move on to the hardware of these two phones. As you know, every time Apple releases a phone, it claims that the chip on it is fastest chip on any smartphone, and that is the case. We've seen some benchmark tests we did around gaming and some other stuff, and Apple does hold up pretty well when it comes to their system chip on system architecture, which if you were to compare with the iPhone 12 Pro, you get the A14 Bionic chip, and on the iPhone 13 Pro A15 Bionic chip because of the innovation on the chip itself. Along with the chip is there's a minor detail around the RAM, which again, it's not something that is closely discussed, but when it comes to gaming, it's an important factor to discuss. Why is that? It's because when you play games that are meant to play on console, you need that extra gig of RAM. So 8 gig on the 13 Pro, 6 gig on the iPhone 12 Pro. That's going to be a key thing if you haven't noticed or haven't looked into it. So if you're gaming, you're going to get a little bit better performance on the 13 Pro, of course, because of the new chip that was designed for it. Now let's move on to another aspect which you're going to be really interested in, is the battery life of both of these two phones. So when it comes to battery life, we want to talk about video playback. Why video playback? It's because it's a good indicator of how long the battery lasts. Apple claims 13 Pro to be an all-day battery. What does that mean? Well, it gets about 22 hours of video playback compared to the 12 Pro, which gives you 17 hours of video playback, 5 hours of video playback. And if you look at the specs here, the 13 Pro has 3095 mAh capacity battery, slightly bigger than the 12 Pro, which has a 2815 mAh battery. It's almost close to 200, a little less than 300 mAh battery difference. And although it does improve the size of the battery, that gives us that extra 5 hours of video playback. And when it comes to duration and initial testing, we did see some really good result for the battery life itself. So other than that, in terms of the software, of course, the 13 Pro here comes with iOS 15 that we showed you guys that was recently launched, and the iPhone 12 Pro here can also be upgraded to iOS 15 from that iOS 14 that was initially launched on it. And we tested out all the major software so far, from the applications to your social media, for your productivity tool. All of your popular apps that you use on a daily basis are going to be flawless on both of the phones in terms of performance. You're not going to have any issues whatsoever. And that's something we generally like about Apple devices, is that its ability to be able to just deliver that sort of power that you get. So there you guys have it in terms of the main comparison. And now to talk about whether the upgrade is worth it. Well, we discussed all of the video in this video, sort of the major things you need to know. So it's the upgrade worth it? If you really think those updates that we mentioned are worth it for you, if you're looking for bigger storage, of course, if you really care about the camera, getting that cinematic mode, and you really care about 8 gigs versus 6 gigs and a bigger battery that will last you a little bit longer, definitely worth upgrading. But if it doesn't make any difference for you of those major changes, you might still be fine with the 12 Pro if you do have the 12 Pro. But if you don't have the 12 Pro and you're upgrading from a lower phone, well, you can't purchase the 12 Pro on Apple's website. You're going to have to be looking around in different retail trying to get that phone. So hopefully this video was helpful. If this video is helpful, please make sure that like and subscribe button, as we'll be doing a lot more comparison video with the 13 lineup against some of the other phones. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys next time.